All right, so I'm going to briefly talk about this upcoming election. Now, obviously, Trump and Kamala are the front runners, right? And Trump and Kamala supporters will often make the argument that voting for a third party is a wasted vote. And the reason they make that argument is because they look at the polls, and the polls show that Trump and Kamala are the only candidates who have a chance at winning. Therefore, voting for any other candidate than Trump or Kamala is a wasted vote again. Now, there are a dozen different holes that I can poke in this argument, but I'm going to focus on one of those today, okay? And to do that, I'm going to give you an analogy. So let's imagine that you want to get stronger, right? And one day you have a goal of bench pressing 300 pounds. How are you going to reach that goal? Well, you're going to start lifting weights. You're going to start bench pressing, right? You're going to get a gym membership. So on day one, you go into the gym. What are you going to do? What's your plan? Well, I'll tell you what your plan isn't, or at least hopefully. You're not going to try to bench press 300 pounds on the first day. That would be very, very foolish, okay? You're going to end up hurting yourself. I mean, hell, I've been lifting for 5 years, and if I tried to bench press 300 pounds a day, I would hurt myself. So if you're a beginner, if you've never bench pressed before, you're going to start slow. You're going to start light. You're going to take just the bar, which is only 45 pounds, and you're going to just get the technique down before you even bother putting weight on the bar. You're going to learn how to do the exercise first. And then, over time, you slowly add weight to the bar, right? It's called progressive overload in the strength training space. So this concept of progressive overload is basically building momentum. It's basically building progress over time towards a desired goal. Now, in this analogy, there are weights that are laying around the gym. Okay, they're not being used. They're being untouched. Those weights are basically insurance policies that are there to ensure that when the weak people do get stronger, they have weights to use, right? So the weights that are just sitting there are waiting for the weak people to be worthy of using them. In that same light, the unlikely voters in this country who don't vote are just waiting for a candidate to earn their votes, right? So if we were to argue that voting for a third party is a waste of a vote, what you're really arguing is that there is no point in bench pressing the bar. There's no point in learning the technique. There's no point in bench pressing anything less than 300 pounds. But we don't make that argument, right? For some reason, we understand the need for progressive overload. We understand the need to build strength over time to reach that goal of bench pressing 300 pounds. But we don't apply that same logic in elections, right? So we tell people voting for a third party is a waste. But again, it's not like that. Voting for a third party today that's only going to get 1% of the vote is like bench pressing the bar today, even though your goal is to bench press 300 pounds. You can't go from 0 to 300 on day one, just like you can't go from 1% to 50% in one election cycle, right? So you're going to come back to the gym every week, and perhaps a couple times a week, and you're going to bench press, and you're going to get better and better just as you come back every election cycle. You're going to get more and more of that vote. And the interesting thing here is that the strongest people in the gym, the people who are perhaps bench pressing 500 pounds, they're genetic freaks, right? Those people have a very, very hard time getting stronger. Whereas a beginner, a novice who just enters the gym, they're going to get stronger very quickly. Somebody who can only bench press 45 pounds today might be bench pressing 135 pounds in a month. The technique's they're gonna get the technique down, and they're going to be able to recuperate, or they're going to be able to use the muscles more efficiently to bench press that weight. Whereas an elite lifter, the person bench pressing 500 pounds, their technique is already perfect, but it's very hard for them to add that next little bit of strength compared to that beginner, right? It's called beginner gains. So in this analogy, the Democrat and Republican Party, they're like the elite lifters, right? It's very, very hard for them to take more weights, more of those unused weights off of the weight stack and put them on the bar. But the beginners, right, the third parties who are just kind of starting up, just getting, they only getting 1% of the vote, it's a lot easier for them to put the weights on the bar. It's a lot easier for them to get the votes, right? And that's what you have to realize here. It's that if the Democrat and Republican Party were so good at what they're doing, well, maybe they would already have all of those unlikely voters voting for them, but they don't. Again, those unused weights that are sitting in the gym, it's not so easy for the strongest people in that gym to claim those weights, to use those weights, right? Whereas the beginners, the third parties, they can take those weights and those unlikely votes, and they can garner them if they so please, right? So again, it's just those unlikely voters, they're waiting to be earned by a third party candidate, and it's very hard for those elite lifters or for those Democrat and Republican candidates to earn those unlikely voters votes. So I guess what this video is kind of like a Hail Mary. It's an attempt to try to get you to vote third party this election. That's my last attempt before November 6th, I guess. But beyond that, if you want to vote Democrat or Republican, go ahead. I don't care. I want you to do whatever you need to do. Ultimately, if people are emotionally attached to Kamala or to Trump, then from a utilitarian perspective, whoever gets the most votes is probably the best choice for the election. And that's the thing. The reason I think people vote for Trump and Kamala is because there's a lot of fear propagation. The Trump campaign propagates fear about Kamala. The Kamala campaign propagates fear about Trump. And before you know it, people are kind of voting for the lesser of two evils to avoid the greater evil. And in the long term, that doesn't get us anywhere. In the long term, that's like deciding to not go to the gym at all. You're not going to build that strength over time. Instead, you're going to kind of stagnate and or perhaps even move backwards, right? If you don't go to the gym at all and you get older and you don't move or exercise at all, you're going to get weaker. You're not going to get stronger. I think we need to consider the long-term momentum, the long-term progress that we have to work towards in the long term to build, to become better, to improve. And right now, I don't think the Democrat Party and Republican Party are doing that for us. I think they have stagnated. I think they've both been captured, frankly, by corporate interests. And maybe the Democrat Party, maybe you side with the Democrat Party in regard to a few culture wars like abortion, gun rights, or vice versa. Maybe you side with the Republican Party in regards to those issues. But I think the underlying economic issues are not being addressed by either of them. And when the economic issues aren't addressed, the culture wars worsen, right? If you can't afford to have a child, you're going to be more likely to get the abortion when you get the surprise pregnancy, right? And then you're going to piss off the Christians who don't like abortions, and the culture war festers, and we end up where we're at. We end up with two corporate-owned parties, the Democrats and Republicans, who are so focused on culture wars and don't even talk about the economy. They don't talk about the inflation that they both contribute to, or the wealth inequality that they both contribute to. They don't talk about the corruption, the insider trading. So, again, there's just a little analogy for you to kind of invalidate the argument that third-party votes are wasted votes. We have to understand that there is an investment that you are making when you go to the gym and lift those light weights, just as there's an investment when you go and vote for that third party. So thanks for watching.